Okay, Jennifer, whenever.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, good evening. West Virginia Wellness Incorporated here. We'd like to welcome you to our 2020 year life lecture series that we are starting tonight. I would like to introduce you to my friend and Dr. Brennan Huls. He's going to give a talk tonight. He's a pediatric and family wellness focused practitioner with 12 years of experience caring for people of the Ohio Valley. In his practice, Connection Chiropractic, he cares for everyone from pregnant moms to 90-year-olds. He grew up in chiropractic and considers his mother, Dr. Terry Huls, to be one of his most powerful influences for helping others in his common sense approach health. When not in the office, you can find Dr. Brennan training at his home away from home, Ohio Valley CrossFit, at the Ohio Valley Mall, or walking his yellow Labrador Molly at Oglebay Park. I would like to introduce you to Dr. Brennan and thank you all for being here. Go ahead, Doc.
All right. Good evening, folks. My name is Dr. Brennan, and it's my pleasure to be with you tonight. How do we share the slides?
I'll do that right now.
Okay, fantastic. Because I want to make sure that that everybody's time is useful. I want to make sure that I can be as useful as possible, and we'll get right to it. All righty.
Okay.
How are we doing here?
Looks great.
Okay. Well, thank you. Let's see. How do I? And my apologies. Like I said, I've been on hundreds of Zoom calls over the years, but I have never been the presenter before. And so this is my maiden voyage as far as that's concerned. All right. But anyway, so what we've been doing in the office is we're running a campaign called Operation Stay Healthy. And especially right now, it's such a weird time. I know that so many people are talking about the immune system for the first time, probably ever. What I wanted to do was I wanted to offer the 6 things that we're telling folks to do or recommending they do. And some of this is going to be stuff you already know. Okay. I'm not gonna be telling you a ton of things that you already know, but there is an important thing that we're going to go over in the second half of this, and I want to make sure that it's valuable for everybody. So without further ado, here we go. And let's see here. Did I do something? Let's see. Do I have control? Do you have control?
I think I do. Do you want me?
Okay.
Let me know when you want me to go to the next slide.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Okay. So I think the very first place that this conversation starts is figuring out what your perspective is on where health comes from. And I mean, maybe you've never thought about it. And if you haven't, that's okay. But there are a lot of people talking about health for the first time in a real serious way. And what I see is there's a divide. There are people who think that health comes from the outside, that they are kind of a product of bad or good luck, bad or good germs, bad or good genes. And then there are folks who probably are more of this group, the wellness group, this tribe, right? Who understand that health comes from the inside. And obviously, the way that you wherever you put yourself on that spectrum is going to dictate your actions and how you think about not only your own health, but the health of people around you and what you do. And so what we're going to talk about is from the perspective of knowing that health comes from the inside, that you, regardless of what folks in who are authorities say, you can have an effect on your immune system, that you can, the actions that you take do have an effect on your health and well-being. And we know that, but there are folks out there that are telling people that it doesn't, for example, and we'll get into this when we get into nutrition or supplements, but vitamin C has a documented effect on your immune system. And so when we have people in the mainstream who are telling people that, no, don't worry about that, has no effect, that's frustrating to me. And probably think the same thing again if you're part of this wellness tribe. So again, everything is from the perspective of health coming from the inside, and that I have control over my own health, at least to some degree. And you can go ahead to the next slide. Okay, so the very first thing that we're going to talk about is nutrition. I think that most people understand nutrition. Let me say it again. Most people understand that nutrition is important, that what you put in your body is super important as far as making sure that the fuel that you're using for your own body is effective, right? Crap, exactly. So I think most people are going to resonate with this. Unprocessed whole foods and organic and local, if possible. I think that's pretty much a given, right? Shop local and eliminate the crap. And I think depending on who you listen to, crap could stand for a bunch of things, but in this case, carbonated drinks, staying away from the sodas and things like that. Refined sugar, of course, because sugar we know has a detrimental effect on your immune system, the function of your immune system. Artificial anything, I think that's pretty straightforward. And processed anything, especially right now, especially when we have just a abundance of stress in the world, making sure that the food that you get, the nutrition that you get, the fuel that you get is top notch, is an excellent idea. So instead of eating crap, making sure that you are eating more food, and of course that's fruits and vegetables. A variety is best, right? What is the saying? Make sure that you have a lot of color on your plate, so that you're making sure that you get the vitamins and minerals, micronutrients, things like that. And organic lean proteins. Again, making sure that you are fueling yourself properly, depending on what your bent is. Even if you're vegetarian or something, you can still get good quality proteins. Organic, omega-3 fatty acids. And I don't have any recommendations as far as how much of any of this stuff you need to get. I mean, we can talk about that. We can get down into numbers and things, but this is just an overall general perspective. But making sure that you are fueling your nervous system, especially because, believe it or not, your brain functions on, it actually has to rebuild itself or uses its building blocks, omega-3 fatty acids. Super, super important. It's one of the reasons why we don't want to have trans fats in our diet, because those get in the way of healthy restoration and healing and things like that. And of course, drinking water is super important. Always have that available, making sure that you are staying hydrated. Go ahead to the next slide. So we can also get into supplements. And of course, supplements are really critical, but especially making sure that your nutrition, the base level, the foundation of your diet is solid. And if you have places where you're not getting enough as far as from your regular nutrition. We still hearing me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay, good deal. Anyway, and there are so many supplements. Like we could talk for hours probably on supplements, but making sure that if you're into taking vitamins and things, you're getting a good quality multivitamin. Again, going back to that omega-3 fatty acids, making sure that you are a probiotic. If you're not familiar with what those are, that's a supplement that you can take to make sure that your gut is populated with good, healthy, and healthful bacteria, rather than dysbiotic, rather than being out of balance with what it should be as far as your normal gut flora. And of course, vitamin D, making sure that if you're not getting enough sunshine, which in this area we probably don't get enough sunshine, making sure that you are supplementing with a good vitamin D, which also has an effect on your immune system. And into the vitamin C, as far as elderberry, I personally have not had much experience with elderberry. I hear from some of my practice members that it's a wonderful thing. And so if anybody has any perspective on elderberry, I'd be happy to listen to hear your experience with it. And raw apple cider vinegar and just things like that are tried and true to help support healthy immune function. Go ahead to the next slide. All right. Something that a lot of people know is important, but not necessarily are aware that it's a nutrient, is movement. Our bodies are designed to move. If we didn't need movement, we probably wouldn't even need a brain. Our brain is primarily geared not toward learning Shakespeare sonnets and things like that, but for our ability to move throughout our environment. It's a critical piece of the equation. And as you know, most people are pretty sedentary, especially right now. If you're not going to work, if you're sitting around at the kitchen table doing Zooms all day long, you're probably not getting nearly enough exercise and movement. And I'm dismayed to find out that even the hour that I spend at CrossFit on a daily basis is not enough if I'm sitting around for 6 or 8 or longer hours a day, right? And so we need to move on a regular basis. We absolutely do. It is critical for not just staying healthy and keeping ourselves strong and all that kind of stuff. It's absolutely critical for how our brain functions. We need movement to function normally. And so our best recommendation is, look, whatever you're into, if you are a walker, if you are somebody who jogs, if you're into CrossFit or Zumba or yoga or whatever, do it. Just whatever you're into. If it includes movement, then get after it 3 to 5 times a week. Make sure you work up a sweat, I think that there's several books that I highly recommend, or several people to pay attention to. One is a guy named Mark Sisson. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he has a series. He has a blog that's been around for a long time called Mark's Daily Apple. And he's a guy from California, and he's put out multiple books on, I think one of his books called The Primal Blueprint. And he talks about, ways that anybody of any age can get healthy and fit. They don't need a whole lot of equipment or any equipment at all. And I think, if people are looking for options of what to do, people like him are a great option to look into. If you are familiar, there's a wonderful woman here in the Ohio Valley. She is from the YMCA. She has a group called The Movement, and her name is Allison Hickey, and she has been putting on workout classes every single day, on her Facebook pages and stuff like that. And so especially right now, there are tons of options that are available for people so that they can stay, active and moving. Even if you can't go to your local gym, even if you can't do those things, you can always stay active. I can tell you from experience that it doesn't take a whole lot of burpees. If you're familiar with what burpees are, it doesn't take a whole lot of them to work up a good sweat. You don't need a whole lot of space. And if you're not familiar with what burpees are, I'm happy to explain. But anyway, I digress. If you can get out in the sunshine and the fresh air, bonus points to you. All right. And so again, movement is a critical piece of the equation. You can go ahead to the next slide. All right. Again, I don't think it should be any surprise that sleep is really, really critical, especially right now, especially when I don't know about you folks, and my own personal routine hasn't been that disrupted, but I know some folks, their routines are all over the place. They don't have to get up for work, or that kind of thing, so they can sleep till almost noon. Well, that's not healthy. So making sure that your sleep schedule stays pretty consistent. Bedtime matters. If you can get in, if you can get to sleep by 10, that's a very, very good thing. It's critical to a healthy body, healthy immune system, healthy sanity. And I've read some amazing books on sleep. One is by, I think it's just literally called Sleep. And it's by Matthew Walker. It's an excellent book. And I just recently was introduced to a concept called sleep chronotypes. I don't know if you're familiar with that. And I can't remember, I apologize, I can't remember the guy's name offhand. I'll find it, but you can find him on YouTube. Just look up sleep chronotypes. And it's really interesting. Just the way that people think. Never heard of sleep chronotypes. Yeah, I understand. I hadn't heard of it till recently either. But like I said, it's worth looking into, especially if you want to make sure that you are getting enough sleep. Again, it's a stressful time. Severe disruption to daily rhythms. Consistent sleep is really, really critical right now. You can go ahead. All right. And the one thing that I think that everybody needs right now is connection. We are social creatures. I think that that's a pretty obvious thing, even in the era of social distancing. And, of course, we as humans crave connection. And it's wonderful that we have the technology like this. I can't imagine what this situation would be like if we didn't have the ability to communicate with each other via Zoom and other technologies. It's wonderful. It's also a wonderful time to, if you're not in a group, either join a group or start your own group. Make sure that you're communicating with people, and make sure that you are, again, isolation is not good for us as humans, and it absolutely has an effect on our health and immune system. We know this. We know that isolation is not a good thing, and it's not good for people's mental health right now. So connect in any way that you can. Maybe you can't go and hug your neighbors, but you can certainly call them up on the phone. If you know somebody who's struggling, reach out to them. It's a great time to show your vulnerability and discuss challenges that you might be having with somebody else, because chances are pretty good that they're having the same challenges. Okay, go ahead. All right, so I know, yes, sleep doctor. Yes. That sounds right. By Michael Bruce, or something like that. Yes. Thank you very much. Okay, so I know that I have not shared anything life-shattering or groundbreaking with you so far. I think everybody understands nutrition, supplements, sleep, movement, all those types of things. But there is a missing piece, and that missing piece is my specialty, which is the nervous system. So go ahead. And of course, I'm a chiropractor, so I'm biased, all right? But what you have to understand is all those other things don't function well or aren't nearly as effective if your brain and body aren't able to communicate effectively, and there isn't a strong connection, a strong communication link between all of your organs and tissues and glands and everything, and the thing that runs the whole show, which is your brain and your spinal cord and all that. There's so many people who are doing all the rest of those things really well. They're moving well, they're thinking well, they meditate on a regular basis, they sleep really well, or they make sure they get good nutrition and all that kind of stuff, but they're still struggling. I see it every single day, people who should be healthier and they're not. And the challenge is that they have something interfering with that full communication between their brain and their body. Okay. And I know from experience that this might not be what you've heard about when it comes to chiropractic. If you've heard about chiropractic before, you're probably thinking neck pain, back pain, headache, something like that. And I totally understand that. But what we're finding out, and there's a shift in my profession toward not just, we've always been neurologically focused, but a bigger voice out there in the public to tell people, to let them know that that's what we do, rather than just pushing bones back into place, because that's not what we do. We are specialists when it comes to how the nervous system functions with regard to all the other systems of the body, how things are coordinated. And that includes having a strong immune system. So you can go ahead. So the thing that I think is going to be worth your time watching this is the next few slides. And that is because it's just an absolute fact that excessive stress, either emotional, chemical, physical, has a cumulative effect. And when that stress overwhelms your body, there's a shift that occurs, and that causes the stress response. And that's good. The stress response, the fight, flight, freeze response is absolutely healthy when it is used appropriately for the body. When it gets stuck on, when that stress response stays stuck, that's not good. Okay, so let me give you an example. One of the classic examples is, imagine you are on the Serengeti, and you are walking toward the watering hole, okay? And tall grass, you're walking along, no care in the world, you're focused on getting to your destination, and a lion jumps out of the tall grass. Immediately, before you can start to even rationally process or consciously process what's happening, there are already chemical changes that are happening in your body to prepare you to get away, to fight back or run like crazy, so that you can survive. All right. And that makes sense, right? Our stress response is an incredibly important thing. It protects us all the time. But imagine if all day, every day, your body thought it was running from the tiger or lion or bear. That would not be a healthy response, right? Because we know that there are certain things that, like that teeter-totter in the corner, or seesaw, however you want to describe it, in the corner, when that stress response is on, then our other side of the equation, which is our restoration, relaxation, what we call the parasympathetic system, is downregulated. And this includes things like your digestion, your immune system, your ability to think. Those things are downregulated when you are trying to run from the lion or the tiger or the bear, And so that's what I mean when I say stress stuck on. We don't come back to a balanced state. We get this. And the longer we're stuck like this, the harder it is for this system or this side to be brought back up. Okay. So just like it says, excessive sympathetic stress, or that fight, flight, freeze response, suppresses the immune system. And one of the reasons is because you don't have to fight a cold if you can't get away from the tiger or the lion or the bear. If you get eaten, you don't need to, your white blood cells don't need to function, right? It's not a high priority. Oh, by the way, if you can't get away from the bear, then your digestive system, like I said, gets downregulated. And it's critical for your immune system that your digestive system works properly, because you have to get rid of the waste. And so what we see is when folks have this stress stuck on response, constipation is a really common thing. Stress to the liver and the rest of the accessory organs to digestion, those organs are under a lot of stress, and it prevents that person's immune system from working optimally. And it makes them more susceptible, right? It reduces their resistance to all kinds of other things. And right now, people are so worried, right, about getting exposed to something just by being within 6 feet of somebody else. That is bananas to me, right? But that's the world that we live in right now, where people are, they're scared that they're perfectly healthy and they're going to be exposed to something that is going to take them down. Well, if you want to be less susceptible, you can make sure that your body is functioning optimally. Okay. And so that you can fight off illnesses, so that you can deal with things like viruses and bacteria and other stressors in your environment. And you can go ahead to the next slide. Okay. And so what chiropractors do, if they're focused on the nervous system, like what I'm talking about, is we help to restore nervous system function by taking the stress off of the nervous system so it can get out of that fight, flight, freeze response, so that there's a balance that can be restored. We don't fix people. We allow their bodies to come back to normal function. Okay. So when somebody says to me, "Doc, you fixed me," you know, no offense, and I'm not being falsely modest, but that's really not what we're doing. Every time I adjust somebody, it's always to help restore normal function. And when we function normally, all of our systems tend to work better, including our immune system. The adjustment releases and reduces that built up stress. And the nervous system then achieves better balance, AKA less sympathetic stress, and the immune system can function better, helping fight off illness and get you through faster and overall keep you healthy. Okay, go ahead. Okay, and so one of the questions that comes up is, how do we know? Well, we don't guess, we test. And in my office, we have amazing technology that allows us to literally measure how people are dealing with the stresses in their life and how much stress they currently have and how they're dealing with the stresses that come up. And so I wanted to point out that the diagram on the left with the blue man and all the bars and everything, that is a test that looks at thermal information, so temperature information. Literally, we're taking 24,000 temperature readings on each side of the spine from the bottom to the top. And what we're measuring there is we're measuring the temperature difference from side to side. And what that tells us is how well is blood flow being regulated, and blood flow is controlled by the nervous system. It's controlled by smooth muscle contraction, and that is controlled by the nervous system. So by looking at skin temperature, we can get a really clear understanding of what is going on. Yeah, exactly. It is a type of thermography. Exactly. And so when we look at this, for example, this person, one of the things that they had going on is they have a lot of stress with their thyroid. Well, the thyroid is at the base of the neck, and that red bars there is very indicative of stress in that area, which can affect things like the thyroid, which of course is one of the major drivers of your hormonal system, which has a huge effect on your immune system. So it always comes back to the nervous system and making sure that everything is coordinated and regulated properly, right? If you look on the next diagram there, it says gas and brake, and that little white circle up in the middle of the green teardrop is a measure of what we call heart rate variability. And heart rate variability is simply the timing between the beats of your heart. And one of the things that we know and that we've known or that we've been studying for, I think, roughly 40 or 50 years now, is that there should be a level of flexibility built in this system. Because believe it or not, when you listen to somebody's heart through a stethoscope, it sounds like every beat is the same, you know, the timing is the same, you know, but it turns out that there's actually very, very, very small deviations or variations between the timings of those beats. And the reason is because that flexibility that's built in allows us to handle extra stress in our life. And when the variability isn't there, when that flexibility is gone, then that keeps us from being as healthy as we could or should be. And so we're able to measure that. Literally, we're able to measure how you are dealing with stress, how your body is dealing with the stresses that you're under. And we can tell whether somebody's stuck on the gas pedal side, okay, that sympathetic overdrive that we talked about earlier, or if they're actually stuck on the other side, maybe the brake pedal, maybe the parasympathetic, that rest and digest system is actually more dominant, okay? And again, we want to see that balance, okay? And again, I'm blessed because we're able to measure that with the technology that we have in this office. You can go ahead. Okay. And our focus is always going to be on, you know, making sure that your nervous system, and I keep saying our focus, but really, you know, again, you can be doing all those other things, but if your nervous system is out of balance, then that makes your life just that much harder. That makes your body have to work just that much harder. So I'm of the opinion, I don't think this should be a shock at all, but that everybody should have a chiropractor, especially if they want to stay as healthy as possible. And again, the reason is because that connection, which you see the brain in the middle of your screen roughly, and then the spinal cord, which is that that thin blue line that runs down essentially through the spine, although that's not exactly how it works. But anyway, but that's the conduit. That's the communication system for your entire body. That's the way that your brain coordinates and regulates everything that's happening in your body, this constant communication that's going back and forth. And if there's any disturbance to that, one of the things one of the groups that I work with, that I love to work with, are babies and, little kids and everything like that. And even babies can have stress in their nervous system, especially if mom has been stressed throughout her pregnancy, right? I think Carol can, give a lot more information about that, right? I'm sure you've seen lots and lots of stressed, pregnant ladies. And that creates a pattern of stress for that little baby. And so we see lots of little kids who they've really never been off of the gas pedal. They've really never been out of that fight, flight, freeze response. And it's no wonder that they see, colic, so digestive issues. We see lots and lots of kids with ear infections because their drainage system, the sewage system in their body, their lymph system isn't able to drain properly. So their ears stay stuck with fluid, and it constantly is a breeding ground for viruses and bacteria and things like that. We see kids with a lot of sleep issues. Well, it's hard to sleep when your foot's always on the gas, right? And so, again, the thing that I think is missing from most people and their healthcare team, most people, unfortunately, not only do they not have a chiropractor, but they've never even been told about this. They've never had this information shared with them. And once you see it, it's like, oh, okay, well, if there's no one else that's actually looking at this system and how my nervous system is regulating itself, I probably should, have somebody do that. And that doesn't have to be me, or I'm not trying to promote myself, but find a chiropractor, find somebody who understands this. It is really, really critically important. And I'm certain that I really hope that what comes out of this crisis, the coronavirus thing that we're living with right now, is one, I hope that more people understand how their body actually works. It would be wonderful if people started to really look into how their immune system works, how it actually functioned, so that they could arm themselves with knowledge, so that when they see something on TV and they hear somebody say something, they can evaluate that from a perspective of, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. Or no, that's not how that body works. That's not how my body works, And I think that's a journey that everybody needs to take. And frankly, we have so many resources available to us. I can promise you that you can learn more about the immune system from YouTube than your doctor probably knows, and that's amazing and sad at the same time. But it used to be that knowledge was something that wasn't available to us 24/7, 365. You actually had gatekeepers, and we don't have gatekeepers anymore. And so it's an amazing time for people to learn about these things. Again, there are some wonderful tutorials on how the immune system works, how all the body systems work, and everything. I highly recommend those to people. But the reason I wanted to put this final graphic up there is, if you look on, I know it's a little bit difficult to see because it's a little blurry, but most people are so focused on the effect side, the right side of the screen, all of the symptoms and signs and signals that something is going wrong. And we really don't have anybody in the healthcare space who really focuses on the left side, right? Who focuses on making sure that all those tissues and all of those glands and organs and everything like that are functioning normally. Oftentimes it's focusing on the symptoms. And I want you to understand, or I hope that I'm not coming off as saying that those other doctors are wrong. It's just what they've been taught. That's how they have been taught to look at the body, as a system of pieces and parts, and that things just go bad, and oftentimes you are dealing with the symptoms. And that's kind of what people are doing right now with coronavirus, from what I understand, because we don't have a vaccine and we don't have a definite effective treatment, right? Or effective treatments. Oftentimes, again, at least from what I've heard, it's all about helping deal with the symptoms. And unfortunately, no one is really looking at, making sure that that person's lungs are working at 100%, because the brain and the lungs can communicate effectively. And so if I had my wish, I'd actually be checking all the doctors and the nurses and making sure that they were operating at 100% before they ever took care of a patient. But anyway, I digress. And so the main point that I wanted to offer, or the main value that I hope you get out of listening to me ramble on, is that the most important part of this entire equation is making sure that your brain and body are fully connected. They're able to communicate effectively. And when you do that, your body is able to stay healthy, and you're able to handle the stresses that come up, the billions and billions and billions, the countless numbers of viruses that you're exposed to on a regular basis. This is not something new. It might be a new type of virus, but you have been exposed to viruses literally every day of your entire life. Some of it have affected you in a negative way, and some you've not even had any kind of problems with at all. And that's not because they might not be dangerous, but it is because your body effectively fought things off. Your body effectively had the armor, the ability to recognize something is dangerous or whatever, and handle it, effectively. And that is your immune system, your body's ability to know what is dangerous and to address it appropriately. Okay. So anyway, I feel like I'm rambling, and you go ahead to the next slide. So our main focus is just get checked. And so I certainly offer anybody who's watching this the opportunity to contact me and set up an evaluation to have these tests done, to figure out how your brain and body are communicating. And if they're not communicating so well, what is the plan to get you to a situation where your brain and body are communicating better? And if your brain and body are communicating well, awesome. That's great. That's the best of all possible situations. But unfortunately, we find so many people who, again, otherwise they're doing all the right things, but this one piece is missing, and it's keeping them from being optimal. And if you go to the next slide, that's my contact information. So feel free to contact me, and that's really all I have to say as far as this is concerned. But I'm happy to take any questions. I'll do my very best to answer. Sure. The temperature analysis. I wish I was back in my exam room. I'd show you exactly what it looks like. But the whole purpose of that is that it allows us to evaluate the autonomic nervous system, which is the part of the nervous system that controls blood vessels, glands, and organs. And it is, when you think autonomic, think automatic. All the things that are happening behind the scenes. You've never had to think about them. You've never had any voluntary control over them, but making sure that part of your nervous system is optimal, again, is an incredibly important facet of overall health and wellness. And one of the things we find is that one of the other tests that we do, it looks at muscle activity, and we call it electromyography, or EMG. Okay. And so it actually looks at the structural part. It looks at essentially not just whether muscles are tight, but how balanced is your body? How much work is your body doing just holding you upright, and things like that. And one of the things that we know is the longer patterns of structural distortion are in your spine and the nervous system and everything like that, the longer those patterns of structural distortion are there, the more it affects the more delicate tissues of like the autonomic nervous system. And so we see a correlation between the stressed areas where people are like, I'm always tight right here, or, this hurts back here or something like that. And the deeper, more delicate part of their nervous system that controls, like I said, blood vessels, organs, and glands. Did that answer that question? That's a great question. A lot of chiropractors accept insurances, and good. I'm glad I'm glad I answered that. Good. As one of my mentors says, did I answer your question or did I dance? And hopefully I don't do too much dancing because I'm not very good at it. Anyway, as far as insurance, yes, some insurance companies contribute, in different ways to people's chiropractic care. The best thing to do would be to contact us and talk about it on an individual basis. I personally don't take any insurance because I don't want them being a middleman, frankly. The relationship I have with the people I take care of is between me and them. And that allows us to have reasonable fees and not have to deal with, people who are outside of that relationship making decisions about your care and how much you can experience and all that kind of stuff. But again, I agree. I try to keep my fees as reasonable as possible. Any other questions? I'm sure. I'm happy to answer as many questions as I can. Carol, Jennifer, do you guys have any questions? Is this different than I always ask people, is this different than what you've heard about chiropractic? Is it, excuse me, I do not have COVID. But was what I talked about as far as the nervous system, was that something you had ever heard before, or was that new information?
For me, some of it was new information. I always thought chiropractors helped align your
Gotcha.
body to make you feel better. And I know that there could be some possible, positive effects for that. Sure. But I didn't realize, I guess, personally, that there's a lot more to aligning your body for your whole well-being.
Yeah. The way that I tell people or talk to people about it is, life is better when you're in tune, and if I'm not I am not a musician. I'm a singer, but that's a whole different thing. But, as far as playing the guitar, can't play the guitar. I do know, however, that it is absolutely critical that your guitar is in tune, right? And it doesn't matter whether you play your guitar every single day and that's your livelihood, or you play it every 6 months when you decide to get it out of the case. You have to make sure that it's in tune before you start playing. And that's the way that we look at somebody's body. And what I find is there are a ton of people out there who are not only out of tune, but they've never been in tune. They start off life out of tune. And so they just think that, digestive issues are normal. They just think that ear infections, chronic ear infections for kids are normal. They just think that, getting sick and staying sick for weeks on end is normal. And it's real common, but it's not normal. It's, your body has the inborn, innate ability to function at a higher level. And most people, if they really should be functioning at like 100 all the time, they're functioning around 80, maybe 65. I mean, it's not, excuse me. It's not to the point where they're miserable. Well, some people are miserable all the time, but for the most part, they just accepted that this is where they're going to be, and they're just going to stay there. And, if you choose to do that, fine. But what we find is people have so much more potential. And like I said, I hope that as a result of all of this, discussion about, I think it's interesting that none of the recommendations out there in the mainstream media, and I don't want to get into politics or anything like that, but I think it's really interesting that none of them have had any discussion about, hey, you want to make sure that you are eating good quality food, right now, and make sure that you're getting enough rest, and make sure that you're doing all of the 5 other things that we talked about before I got into the nervous system. I think it's appalling that that we don't have somebody on the news every single night saying, hey, you have control over how your body responds to its environment. You really do. And the choices you make will determine how healthy you are. We don't have anybody saying that. And that's, frankly, I think they should be embarrassed, because it's absolutely true that, you know, and I understand sometimes you have bad luck and all that kind of stuff, but honestly, your body is designed, and I firmly believe this. I think it's absolutely, not just something I believe, but the evidence shows conclusively that your body is designed to be healthy, and it has the capacity to stay healthy and function extremely well, as long as that interference, that stress doesn't get stuck on.
Well, thank you. You know what, but and this is Marnie, this is why we have you on, Dr. Huls, because, you know, the mainstream media isn't talking about this, and people do need to hear it, so they will be listening. I'm going to put one more question in the chat box for you.
Sure.
I was wondering if you had to have any special training to do the thermo type. It's a nice diagnostic. I've never heard of it before. And if it could tell you if your thyroid or something was giving you, was a root of something and you couldn't figure it out other ways, then that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. So the technology that we use is specifically used in chiropractic, but it's not, you know, I tell people this all the time too. I am thrilled when we're the first people that have ever done those scans on somebody, but I'm also sad because this is something that should be available, if they just understood it, should be available to literally any doctor.
Okay, no.
Should be available to literally any doctor, because it would give them so much more information about what's going on. The most amazing things in this office happen when somebody looks at their scans and then they look at that sheet that last handout that I had up there, where it shows, you know, that list of symptoms and signs and signals and everything on the right side. And then they correlate that back with what's showing up on their scans, and they start making those connections. You know, they're like, oh, no one's ever told me that this challenge that I've had for so many years could be related to this, you know?
So I don't want to interrupt you, but I want to ask, you know, the only thing I can think comparable in the doctor's world would be something like a PET scan, which would be just about $1,000, and you would only drop that kind of money if they thought that you had cancer.
Oh yeah.
So,
and it'd be a dangerous test to do.
Right. I'm in healthcare. I do not hear anything about any kind of thermal scanning. And if Jennifer could take us back to slide 12, and because that was a really neat slide. And that showed the thyroid. Is that what was? So
what I'm pointing out there, what I'm pointing out there is simply that in this particular case, and I want to make very, very clear that we are not making diagnoses off of these scans. They're simply,
I get that.
Yeah, there's so there's simply a way that we can not just correlate, but we can really, with some specificity, figure out exactly where those areas of stress are showing up. And so for this particular person, you know, when we look at the base of their neck there at C5, C6, C7, we know that the main nerves that go to, among other things, the thyroid, come out of that area. So it does not necessarily mean that this person was hypothyroid. It doesn't necessarily mean that they had a diagnosable thyroid problem. I'm simply saying that this tells me that there's more stress than what there should be there. You can think of it as a fuse box, and those bars are all the fuses, and anything that's colored is some level of overload in those fuses. And I don't know about you, but if I know that I have an overloaded fuse, I don't want my house to burn down. So I want to get that addressed as, effectively and efficiently as possible. But there's a lot of people running around out there, and their house is literally just about to burn down because no one's ever done this type of testing with them. And like I said, I think that's a really a shame. But like I also said, this testing, maybe the heart rate variability is being used more in the mainstream, depending on who you go and see. But the other two tests, I think, are strictly chiropractors.
Yeah. Well, that's very, very interesting. We're about to the end of our time. Carol,
sure.
Anybody else have questions before we have to close for the night? We're keeping this to about an hour.
Sure.
And your timing on your talk was great.
So
very,
Brennan,
very interesting.
Yes, Carol.
We do thermography in my office.
Okay.
And we have clients that have issues that come up, and their doctors have no clue how to address those red areas of inflammation. And I'm thinking of one client in particular that had whiplash, and she always shows high inflammation in that area. Would you be able to, if I referred her to you, would you be able to help address that more?
The only way to know for sure is to actually check. But what you've described sounds to me like a situation where somebody got injured, they got stuck in that not just the physical stuck, but they got stuck where their nervous system is perceiving that it's in danger constantly. And because of that, because they're stuck, there's a pattern there. And if we can address that pattern and unlock that pattern, then that gives that person's body a chance to create a better, healthier pattern.
Good. I will be in touch with you
Sure.
and her soon.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Very
Again,
well,
I'm super happy to help. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for inviting me to, be on this maiden voyage of the West Virginia Wellness Zoom, lecture series. I really do appreciate the opportunity. I love talking about this kind of stuff, and I appreciate you letting me ramble on.
We appreciate it. I enjoyed it.
We're so glad to have you. And Jennifer, if you want to close us out and just maybe talk about next month's meeting. And
I just want to say one other thing.
Oh,
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry about interrupting you. If anybody